thanks very much. Thanks very much. We talked a little bit earlier about some of the experience. I know we have a lot of people here who have quite a bit of experience in new home sales. Some of you are just looking to get started and pursue some of those opportunities. But what's interesting is in the area of new home sales, there's really no set path that you can follow in your professional development that's been laid out before we develop these certification courses. So most of us, and I think you can relate to this, most of us out there kind of just figured it out as you went, right? Mm-hmm. And you try to learn what you can from reading this and that and figuring things out from a builder or developer, and you put the pieces together. So we have varying levels of experience. And I've found, we've had people take this course, have had 35, 40 years plus experience out there working in the business, and they'll go through and they'll say, you know what? As much as I've done this, as long as I've been doing it, I just really never thought of that. I never put this together or that together. A little story I like to tell that relates to that, because as an instructor, one of my challenges is making sure that everyone who's taking the course gets up to speed, and we don't have any blanks in the overall. When you get to the end, you've got the comprehensive package of material and understanding to make things work. A little story that relates I love is two couples hadn't seen each other for the longest time. And the two women are chatting away, and the two men are chatting away, having a nice conversation. And the one guy says to the other guy, it's a brand new restaurant downtown. The food, the service, terrific. The prices are reasonable. You really ought to check it out. The other guy says, no kidding, I'd love to. What's the name of the restaurant? Well, he's up in years. They're both pretty old. And he's scratching his head. He's trying to remember. And he says to the other guy, what is that flower that has a long stem on it with thorns on the stem? And the guy says, that's a rose. He says, that's right. He turns to his wife. He says, Rose, what is the name? What's the name of that restaurant we went to the other night? Now, some of you may relate to that a little too directly. The message is, do you agree? You know, some of us here have tremendous levels of experience. Do you agree, though, that even though we may have a lot of experience, we may have learned something a long time ago, or certain things were just instinctive to us, do you agree that we don't necessarily always apply that in our business when it may give us the greatest benefit? Agree with that?
Yep.
And we're going to come back to that concept a number of times. So my goal is, again, don't be insulted if some of the stuff you say, wow, that's pretty fundamental, that's pretty basic. The fundamentals are absolutely essential. Ask a pro football player or basketball player. Ask Tiger Woods if the basics, you know, those little details are important. So we're going to cover that stuff as we go as well. All right, and then another question I have for you. How many of you feel that builders really need us involved in their business? Do builders need us?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so everybody here agrees with that. Do builders always feel that way? No. So you're saying you may have run into a builder now and then that doesn't fully appreciate our participation in the process? Yeah, well, maybe it certainly happens. Now, this happens to be here in Colorado, an area where we've got an awful lot of builders who have been cooperating for a long time. And I've traveled all over the country over the years, and some areas have had more of that, some areas have had less, some areas have had zero cooperation. But we've seen tremendous growth over the years. I actually grew up east of Cleveland, Ohio. And in my area, I'll tell you, it didn't take me long to realize that the real estate industry and the building industry just didn't get along very well. Now, I grew up in a construction family, and so I was on the construction side of it, and my father was an electrical contractor, and my uncles were plumbers and carpenters and all that sort of thing. And it didn't take me long to figure out that we just didn't work with real estate people, you know. And I didn't really understand why. When I got a little older, I actually saw a real estate sign, and it was a realtor whose last name was Walsh. And I came home and I says, hey, is that a relative of ours? And my father says, oh, no, that's a real estate agent. We're the construction Walshes. I said, okay, well, so I let that go. Well, a little bit later, I decided to rile him up a little bit. I came home one day and I says, you are not going to believe this. I heard of a builder and a real estate agent that actually got married. My father lost his mind. This was a mixed marriage in our family. He said, can you imagine the children that would come from a marriage like that? That should not be allowed. So that sounds a little extreme. That's my background. I then grew up to be the guy in the family who started designing and building custom homes and then moved on to focus on helping the building industry and the real estate industry work more successfully. We have seen now, and I've been at this now for more than 18 years, tremendous growth in the cooperation between the two and the level of success shared. So we're going to talk about a lot of that stuff as we go, and we're going to look at some of the details and so on that help make that happen. All right? Here at the top of the page one, I've asked a question, why are there opportunities in new home sales. And we all believe there's opportunities. First thing I'd like you to write down, if you will, is a new home is the American dream. Do you agree with that? A new home is the American dream. If you had to just make an estimate on it, if you had to guess, and of course it varies from market area to market area, but what percentage of people who are in the market for another home, just want to buy another home, would like to at least consider the purchase of a new home? What do you think? How many of you think it would be, say, 50% or more? At least 50%? Yeah. Anybody think it's maybe 70% or more in your area? And sometimes we don't have that many available. How about 90%? Anyone? Okay, well, depending on where I am, I'll be in some areas, for example, Atlanta. Atlanta's an area where almost everybody, they say, oh, just everybody's interested in a new home. Sometimes in Atlanta, we've had up to 45% of all the homes sold are new homes. And markets like Phoenix and Las Vegas and that sort of thing. So some markets, it's a lot stronger. What about relocation buyers as it relates? What do you think? Pretty high percentage, right? Almost all relocation buyers tend to be interested in the new home purchase. Now, question is, so most of us would agree that we have an awful lot, and in some cases we have a majority of people in the market for another home that at least want to consider the purchase of a new home. What happens when the typical prospective buyer of a new home calls up the typical real estate office, gets the typical real estate professional on the phone and says, I'd like to buy a new home, can you help me? What happens? Do they find someone who's prepared, has the market knowledge, has the systems?
Generally not.
Generally not. So what I'd like you to put down for number 2, if you will, the majority of real estate agents have no new home sales expertise. So the majority of real estate agents have no new home sales expertise. Several studies have been done on this, and both come up in the range of roughly 5% of all real estate professionals have some self-proclaimed level of experience in the area of new home sales. So here we have in some areas, say 50%, 70%, 80% or more of the prospective buyers interested in new homes and a small group of agents who have the expertise. Now, what does that say to all of us here in the room?
There's an opportunity.
Boy, that's right. Tremendous opportunity. We're the right people in the right place. Absolutely. If they're out there and they're looking for someone to help them with that process, because see, from the buyer's perspective, and the consumer's perspective, the real estate market includes both new and existing homes, doesn't it? But many people in the business of real estate only see the resale market as the real estate market. So if we're not prepared to help them, what's going to happen?
They're going to go somewhere else.
They're going to go somewhere else. We're going to lose them in the shuffle. If you position yourself as someone who has the skills, the knowledge, and experience to help them buy either a new home or an existing home, I can help you make those comparisons. I'm aware of what's out in the marketplace. I can help you through that process. Would you agree that you're far more likely to have buyers choose you as their professional?